All right, Brian. So, welcome to Behind Company Lines. I'm excited to dive in. Why don't we kick it off? I love what you're working on with Koloni. I would love
Thank
to
you.
hear the sort of impetus for the company and specifically what you set out to achieve when you first started the business.
Yeah, so I it all kind of started back in 2014. I started a gym. I purchased a commercial building and started using access control and started a gym in my hometown in Iowa initially. I realized that the gym was only going to be financially viable and successful with uh, that key card access and really minimizing my overhead with not having people employed. So that was really kind of the aha moment for Colony. Once that was up and going and was kind of on its own, I realized how many other businesses, and not just businesses, but other access points could be enabled by using kind of a more modern version of the access control system I was using in my gym. So yeah, that's how initially that started. We started in bike share actually before the whole micromobility craze, and uh, then we started listening to our customers and realizing that they wanted to provide access to basketballs like basketball courts, tennis racket sets, the local tennis court, vacuums in apartment complexes. The list really kind of goes on and on. So we realized at that point that we should focus our attention to access control with utilizing lockers. And here we are today.
And so, yeah, you've been at this for about 5, 6 years, and the primary focus now is these. Is it? Give me a scope of what the company does and what they don't do. Are you guys manufacturing the lockers and then allowing people to digital access to those?
Yeah, so we actually do third-party integrations with different smart lock
Hmm.
companies around the world. They're integrated into our platform. So businesses, big or small, can purchase anywhere from 10 lock lots up to 10,000, and from any of those integrated products, and then use our software to manage all of those access control points, set pricing, manage their users. And we also have front-end user applications for delivery, storage, and rental that they can customize and manipulate on their own to fulfill those different applications.
Mm. So help break that down a little bit for me. So you're allowing other people to build, other software vendors to build on your platform. So you're maintaining the standard protocol for access control. Is that the right way to think about it?
That's right. That's right. So we essentially enable each of the partners in our software to set the application, so they can customize the locker is going to be used for delivery, storage, or rental application, and then that configures the lock and the user experience kind of templated out for their user to go through those series of steps to access a locker, whether they're picking up their food or renting a vacuum in the apartment complex. We also have other API layers and stuff that they can even get further down the rabbit hole of integrating existing applications. So we really have tools for technical and also non-technical teams.
Yeah, I dig it. Hey, how did you set it up? So are you owning a gym? I'd imagine you weren't spending the majority of your time building software. It's a fairly, to me, it seems like a fairly intimidating business to start, having a background running a gym. How did you have a co-founder? Do you have a co-founder at that time who was really leading the technical development, or how did you guys build out early product?
Yeah, so we actually outsourced from the very beginning. My co-founder and I were both non-technical. We started wireframing things out. Had kind of an idea. I have a little bit of a background in kind of product, but not so much no technical background. So we started kind of laying out the user application and the management software and kind of the features and how the design elements we wanted. And we hired an outsourced team and went through kind of our MVP and our version 1.0 and 2.0. And then we actually started bringing in our own in-house development team with actually started with internships and then brought those people in full time. And so now we have a collection. We actually have we have 4 or 5 full-time developers, and then outsourced development teams as well.
So overall, would you say it was a smooth experience, or was it really quite bumpy?
Absolutely not. No, it was terrible. It was terrible. Yeah, it was. I had no idea what I was doing, and a lot of failures initially, and it was very unstable. Quite stressful because we were selling we're based on a SaaS model, so we had people paying us subscription fees for a while for software that didn't even work, and so that was a stressful time. But after those first couple of years and bringing in some technical people in house really kind of helped stabilize everything.
Yeah, yeah. So how long was that when you were purely outsourcing? A couple of years?
Yeah, like the first 2 years.
Yeah, and it was at least effective to
Yeah.
get to market.
We really never had a. Yeah, I mean, it was effective enough to acquire, the first 5 to 8 of our early customers, something like that.
Yeah. And those 5 to 8, what were the early customers like? Who were those people?
So they were local entrepreneurs, local city leaders that were looking to deploy some type of shared product in their community. So, they weren't anywhere close to our ideal customer now, but they were kind of low-hanging fruit. People that had $5,000 to $10,000 that they could spend on this. But yeah, they were small town people.
In Iowa?
Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois.
Huh.
Very close to home.
So is it businesses primarily? So they're thinking like, what would be what's a use case of and it doesn't have to necessarily be an early customer, but what would be a kind of typical use case?
Yeah. So our typical use case now, we have those early customers that we kind of fit in our local group, but going forward, what we have now is we have what we call a lot of our creators, which are those technical, non-technical teams that are have developed an innovative solution to that has the potential to scale, right? So one of the cool customers we have is this gentleman named Albert in Austria, that he is a mechanical engineer, and he developed a system called Ski Sheriff, where people at the bottom of the ski slope can securely store their snowboards or skis in this using a smart lot that we provided in our platform, and then their user application. So now he's deployed those Ski Sheriff rats throughout Europe, and he's scaling quite rapidly, actually.
Got it. So when he came to you, he said, "Hey, I have a front end mobile app that I want to." Does it technically work where their software, say in this guy's case, he's building the secure ski lock system? Would his app hit yours with an API and say, validate this entry, and then you're kind of the middle layer and you're sending it to the lock and saying, open up?
Yeah, so we have that capability. That's quite popular. In his case, we actually have a white labeled app that he can customize on our software. So he can upload all of his colors. It's almost like creating a Squarespace account, right? You upload your logo, your color scheme, what you want your buttons to say. Do you want memberships? Do you want affiliate programs? Do you want pricing? All those things can be customized. And then our development team, our project manager, will put that to the App Store. And there's a new Ski Sheriff app in the App Store. So he can do that because he was non-technical, or at least non-technical on the software side. Or if he was a technical founder, he could integrate via some of our API layers.
That's awesome. And then on the other side of it, the hardware layer, like how many different lockers or locks do you work with?
I think right now we're integrated with like 5 or 6, something along those lines. Yeah.
It seems I would think that the market's pretty consolidated. Like 5 or 6 is 80% of what people actually use. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know if it's quite 80%, but it's probably a good chunk. So yeah, there's there's some interesting lots that are, in India and some of those countries that we haven't been able to integrate yet, but that would add to it.
Yeah, yeah. And so from the beginning, do you feel like was it a pivot at all, or was it directly what you set out to do is what you're still doing today?
No, yes and no. I mean, we knew early on that we wanted to provide a uh, a new way to access goods using a smart locker. That that was inevitable. We saw that from more or less day one, but it was for a while it was on the back burner, mainly because there um, there was a lot of barriers for us from a hardware standpoint, from a few things, and people were already doing bike sharing, and that hardware was already easily accessible. What we found was there was a lot of smart locks at that point for lockers, but they didn't have SDKs, they didn't have APIs to even integrate those things into our platform, or they didn't have uh, the the ability for us to check the status of is that door unlocked or is that door locked. So a lot of those barriers existed early on that didn't exist in micromobility. So we initially focused in micromobility with the idea of developing the software to be agnostic across whatever product that would be on our
Yeah.
platform.
Interesting. So today there's a lot of lockers out there and a lot of developers or people non-technical that have built on top of those. Where do you see, I mean, when I think of today, my personal experience with smart lockers, I think of,
Yeah.
maybe at a gym, maybe at a ski resort, maybe at an Amazon locker where I'm like picking something up, which could be in a grocery store or Whole Foods or something. Are there other obvious and significant use cases that you think are either happening today and I haven't seen them, or that are coming down the pipeline that are going to affect a lot of people?
Yeah. So, going back to the shared access to certain goods, we see that continuing to grow quite significantly, especially in urban areas, especially as we come out of the pandemic. Uh, one of the reasons that we identified that smart lockers, while they exist, and we might have um, got something from an Amazon locker, but one of the reasons that it really hasn't scaled and hit the potential that we would probably all think that it should, once you start thinking about all the different applications that it could make life easier for us to access those goods, it hasn't scaled because of a variety of reasons, but primarily um, that industry has been ran by very hardware heavy people that the capex is quite expensive. So uh, to give you an idea, our goal was to reduce the cost per compartment, per locker compartment, by essentially close to a factor of 10. So each smart locker right now, it costs on average, if you were a business and putting a smart locker in your facility, it would cost between $550 to $600 per compartment. Um, the lock, the lots that we're focusing on are now getting down to a price point that, in the next 12 months will be hopefully at that $30 to $40 per lock that can attach to any existing, what we call dumb locker or lock, or dumb locker, basic locker system, um, and make that locker smart with all the capabilities of a smart locker with just like $45.
Okay, that seems like a big deal. So when it's very cheap, it's rolled out. There'll just be more of them. So do you think there'll be like lockers on every street corner for delivery or exchange, or?
Yeah. So take the going back to actually a competitive advantage I think we have at Koloni is we had dabbled a little bit in micromobility. And micromobility actually has a lot of those same characteristics. Before Lime and Bird and all of those dockless bike and scooter share companies, they were all docked, right? I don't know if everyone remembers, but you had to go to a keypad system, swipe your credit card, at this keypad that was connected to maybe 20 or 30 bytes. It would unlock. You would drive it to the next station. There was a lot of factors that prohibited that system to scale. The CapEx was very high per bike, about $5,000 per bike. It was limited in terms of where you could drop it off. You had to go find another hub. And then the user experience was quite poor. You had to go to this kiosk system and swipe your card and use a kiosk. All those same factors right now are the same thing that we're seeing in smart lockers. You have to use a touch screen at the locker. The CapEx is rather high, or extremely high, and they're quite limited in function. Right now they're mostly used for parcel delivery. When it comes to a smart locker, they're mostly used for parcel delivery. So all of those characteristics, or those principles that we've identified, attacking them the same way the micromobility industry attacked and scaled, the total available market of micromobility. I think we're going to do the same thing in smart lockers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a good analogy or corollary. What are the technologies that are used? Is there a Bluetooth layer or passive RFID or Wi-Fi or some combination, depending on the setup?
Yeah, so it's a combination typically. There's some that are just Bluetooth only, some that are connected via a Bluetooth mesh network, then turns into a Wi-Fi signal. So it really depends. Obviously, those different lots and different communications provide different levels of security and access and price points. But we kind of have all of them on our platform.
Yeah. I was thinking earlier about driverless cars, the impact that would make, certainly on transportation of shipping goods. Do you think there'll be a Tesla or some other company that rolls out with a purely transport, effectively like smart locker on wheels, where I'm ordering something, where I'm shipping something across town, and I throw it in this car, and then it goes where it needs to go, and then somebody comes out and unlocks it with their phone, just like smart locker style? To me, it seems like that would be massively useful, both for intercity transit, probably more so for intercity transit, just because it's shorter and you can make more runs. But you could have a car with like 20 lockers in it, and it just, it's just like a logistics robot where it's just, hey, I want to ship these headphones across town to my buddy or something, and you just throw them in there. Like Uber actually has on their app, Uber has a transit option, because there's been like probably 10 times where myself or my wife or a friend forgets something, like, oh, I forgot my laptop at your house or something. So we'll just put it in an Uber. I saw this just last time I opened up Uber. They have the transit option, which is like a smart locker on wheels, effectively. And
Do you think those little robots that we see being demoed on campuses, that they're on the sidewalk? The one thing that always stuck out to me was from what I understand, you're only doing one delivery at a time. Maybe you're doing 2 or 3, but what you just recommended makes a lot more sense potentially logistically, of multiple products in one autonomous vehicle that then is just, creating efficiencies on the route.
Yeah, I've thought about this. I actually saw those little things in Santa Monica last time I was down in LA. And I think they're currently being run by somebody behind the camera. So there's a camera and somebody's just steering it somewhere. And so it's not quite delivering on the AI, but that's fine. I do think that the model there is pretty flawed, because you're effectively relying on the transit routes of sidewalks, which can be full of people and bumps and things you can't get over, and you can push the things over. So they're just not, they don't seem feasible to me for long term. They seem like they might be a stopgap, but to use the existing roads that are in place, and with assuming fully autonomous cars, it just makes sense. Like I'm picturing a van with, maybe one door, and it just has, in the back a bunch of like sliding rails where it can just move the object in place, gets the destination, calls you, texts you automatically, you come out, maybe it does a facial recognition or fingerprint or passcode. Probably passcode is all you need. And then it's like, bam, open up. And I'm sure it could even have the ability to like extend an arm and drop it on your driveway if that's what's needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's some interesting things going on. Microhubs, I've heard that word for years now, and there hasn't been a whole lot going on. But microhubs are interesting where, you get off at your Metris train station here in Chicago, and you can access your from a locker, food delivery or something like that, and might save some money on shipping than going to your house. Or microhubs, and typically what I see is centralizing all the packages and then delivering them from there. Um,
Yeah, I could see that
yeah.
working for like non-perishable goods. I just think that the mobility aspect of it is the end state. If we build a bunch of lockers around town and people still have to walk there or bird there or whatever to get there, and then they have to go back.
Mm.
Well, as soon as somebody builds a mobile version of that, then that thing becomes obsolete. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see as many like intercity transits as we do trucks on the road today in, I don't know, 5 years, whenever we're really there with driverless cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, which probably for you guys would be what you'd be the integrating platform. So somebody could use Koloni to set up assuming there's multiple companies who are making these cars, you could integrate to these and then allow people to build.
Yeah, we could be the
Yeah, to
aggregator.
build out specific services. So like Instacart, um, uh, local shipping companies, restaurants, and things. They're all going to want to do this because it's cheaper than a delivery person. You could probably, honestly, get something shipped intercity, like food is probably the massive opportunity for 1%, 5% of what it costs now, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think some of the things that are going to have to be figured out is, if car reduction, if cars are going to be used significantly less, how do we, it comes down to an urban design questions of how do we redesign, the curb to, the center of the street of even making these things substantially more efficient, or is there, the kind of like in some cities there are roads that are only designated for the bus. Maybe there's those lanes that are only for deliveries if it gets to that scale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where do you see the majority of the lockers now? Are they in like specialty use cases like gyms and ski resorts, or is the vast majority of the actual uses in major areas like transit, like a subway station or a grocery store?
Yeah, so we mostly focus our attention on trying to grab a variety of different use cases early on over the past couple of years. Uh, Now we're focusing on things that are maybe a little bit more enterprise that would already have those existing networks that we can plug in locker systems. But early on, we're focusing on, those kayak and canoe storage and rental systems, or that ski sheriff, different unique applications. Um, but that's obviously going to shift. We already see that shifting quite dramatically. The area that we've consistently have seen more and more inquiries is actually food delivery and pickup. We thought this could potentially be transitory in 2020. We actually got just bombarded with inbound. Our traffic spiked, our inbound inquiries went through the roof of businesses scrambling because they said, hey, people can't even set foot inside of my business to get their pickup order. Can I make a locker, that system that I wheel out to the curb during working hours, and then I could put food inside of it? We thought maybe some of those things would subside, a little bit. But I think what businesses, big or small, are finding is that us as consumers are changing forever our behavior, and we don't necessarily feel comfortable going into a restaurant, COVID or not, going into a restaurant and standing there waiting at the front of house for our food pickup order to be brought to us. I want to maybe sit in my car, watch a Netflix video in my Tesla until I get a notification that my food order is ready to be picked up in locker 4. Um, those little changes in consumer behavior and our expectations are getting businesses, big or small, to really start looking at these investments. Not only that, but they're also looking at ways, obviously, with shortages of workers and things like that. They're looking at ways of, okay, how can I reconstruct? We've been really disrupted at front of house. How can we reconstruct maybe a new job or something like that, or eliminate a job by having these systems in place?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. Did you ever follow the story of Joy Mode, the business that allows you to rent?
Yeah.
I think they originally started as B2C, C2C. I guess they would allow consumers to rent from other consumers. And then they shifted into B2C, where they would partner with like Walmart and Target and other places. But I think for the most part, they had their own physical goods in a warehouse in Culver City in LA, which where they started. And they would, I used to use them quite a bit. I could basically request a Xbox or a volleyball net on my phone. They would deliver it to me. Somebody would come and actually deliver the good. And then you'd use it for the weekend, and then they would come and pick it back up. Great idea, but the company shut down, and I think the reason given was just economics. They couldn't make it work. But I wondered if, like, I was like, man, you know, this, why could this possibly be a consumer to consumer rental model using a secure locker and transaction mechanism as the bridge, and you know, like. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's another. Maybe we fall back in the conversation of transportation. Like, how do you securely transport goods from one place to another? But I don't know, man. Once there's a car that can deliver goods in a secure way, autonomously, it just opens that business model back up again. In my view, I don't know. What's your take on it?
Yeah. So. There's a couple of companies that we're working with, startups, smaller companies, that are trying to fulfill that transaction of peer-to-peer, and or as you said, consumer to consumer. But peer-to-peer transactions have always been difficult. I mean, we have Facebook Marketplace, we have Craigslist, but people typically don't feel secure. I know my wife doesn't, right? When she's looking to buy something on Facebook Marketplace and ends up dragging me along. But we're working with a few now in New York specifically that are looking at putting small modular locker systems in places like coffee shops, where the coffee shop generates value by getting more walk-in traffic, right? So they are hosting a locker system. But me, if I'm selling something to you, Mike, it might be like a cordless drill. I can then go to that coffee shop, put it into a locker, and assign it to you, and then you're the only ones that has the rights to it. I think that's something that I'm pretty bullish on. Especially going forward. There's been companies like Spinlister, and a few others that are like peer-to-peer sharing, not even like purchasing, but like, I want to rent something from you, a bike. Well, who's going to stick around waiting for me to meet up with you so I can make $25 a day on my dirty old bike? No one's going to do it.
Yeah. There's a couple things there. I think the peer-to-peer sharing, you're often looking for something kind of obscure, so the chances that people have it are low. Maybe not. Maybe you're traveling and you just literally want a bike, and that's a more common item. But I find myself thinking like, oh, I wanted one of those long hand claw things, so I could, I dropped a screw down a drain, and I was like, oh, those things where you can like push the thing and the thing.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I bet one of these neighbors around here has one. But the chances of me knocking on all these doors, like, it's not going to happen. So, but that's a pretty obscure item,
Yeah.
and I want it because I don't have it, and I don't have it because it's unusual. And then there's also you're dealing with local geography, so the chances that somebody within 5 miles of me also is on this platform and has listed that thing and would respond back, and we coordinate the delivery and the return. It's just a heavy logistical operation. So I think
Yeah.
one thing Joy Mode got right is they did centralize the supply chain of it. They had all the goods in one location where they said, we're going to keep track of inventory, we're going to monitor the quality of the returned items and customer support and all that. So that makes a lot of sense. I could see some sort of scenario where I've often thought this could work for sunglasses, actually, where sunglasses, you tend to go through sunglasses in a stylistic way where I'm into these sunglasses and I'm not after I wear them for a while. And you could have a kind of peer-to-peer verified through a central marketplace where you're using the mail system. So I put my sunglasses in here, I list them, it goes out to a distribution warehouse, they open it up, validate it, and then ship it off to the customer. Assuming shipping is cheap enough, it's like that's one peer-to-peer model. I just don't know how many different types of products there are, like clothing, for sure.
Yeah. I think there's peer-to-peer, maybe not in rental. I think that's quite limited. But peer-to-peer purchasing of used items, you know, I think I don't remember the total market size at the moment, but I think it's surprisingly large and growing, of like people purchasing stuff from, well, there's Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, as I said. There's a few others a few other apps that have done quite well, but you're not sharing it, you're not renting it, but you're actually purchasing the product from peers. I think potentially closing that gap of coordinating times, all of those sorts of things, also making it, the safety. I find it interesting and really cool. Have you seen the Apple commercials recently of them selling the Apple Watch? It's all about like safety and people's, there's supposedly real life audio of people saying, hey, I'm my car turned over, I can't find my phone, and the Apple Watch saved their life. I think security is something that could be of great importance when you talk about peer to peer and those transactions.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, boy, a lot does change once you have that autonomous car, like autonomous driverless storage car just driving around town.
When do you think we're going to see that car driving around?
I thought that was going to be Waymo. I thought Google was going to come out with that like 7 years ago. They just seem to not be making any progress.
Yeah.
And it can't be any technological barrier because Tesla is just blowing through, every tech blocker they have. I think it's probably Google's internal struggle to actually commit to this project and build out the supply chain and the logistics necessary. But I think Tesla could make it, possibly. If Tesla makes it and they're the first ones, then we're still a long ways away. I think it'd be more like Amazon comes out and they roll up another company and they build in the logistics, because Amazon would just have the resources and the technical know-how on the logistical end. It would just be a matter of them probably acquiring the right company to build out the hardware and engineering knowledge. And there's a number of these companies that are out there now that are retrofitting to existing cars. So I bet it's a retrofit to an existing car. And we look at like one of these large vans, and those vans just become driverless, which is, it's like a big deal. Drones might have a role to play, but I'm pretty bearish on drones for everyday deliveries. I just think I don't know. I could be totally wrong on this, but I think the sound of having the drones fly around throughout the day is pretty significant. But I don't know. We have cars in the road, so they're pretty loud. I mean, drones realistically could be the end all be all for any packages delivered under 10 pounds.
Did I see something recently that there's a company building some type of drone delivery service that sits on top of buildings in urban areas? And I think I read something about that. And what was interesting to me is I think at that point the drones would be so high above the street that they'd probably be
Yeah.
silent. But it was almost like an elevator or some type of, those tubes when you go
Yeah.
to the bank, something like that, that they were going to use the rooftop and then get those packages even all the way down to street level
Oh,
if
that's
needed.
interesting.
That would be
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the vast majority of cases, there's just not that many deliveries going on. So, I mean, if you heard a drone come down and be like, zzz, and it lands in your neighbor's yard to drop off some toothpaste, like you probably just get used to it. Because alternative to that is a car pulls up, and I think the drive towards a green objective, lower carbon emissions, is enough to really push this forward politically in cities to get the regulatory approval to be flying these drones around. And I think also consumer backing would really kind of relieve the tensions on that. People used to complain about windmills, saying that windmills were ugly on the horizon. But it's like, well, are they really? I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If you know what impact the windmill can make on energy, you're like, well, that's just the way of the future. So then it changes symbolically in our minds. That's my take on it.
So you think self-driving cars for delivery is 5 years away, 10
I
years away?
think, well, Tesla was very clear about their product called Taxi, which was they must have announced this maybe 3 years ago, where it was if you're not driving your Tesla and you want to make money and effectively they're competing with Uber and Lyft, you can put it in taxi mode. People can come and it'll just drive around the city. I think it'll be like a retrofitted taxi service on Tesla. Tesla just seems to be so far and ahead on the self-driving that'll be the first use case. That they'll reach level 5 or fully autonomous car driving with nobody in it before anyone.
Yeah.
I think the most recent news I've heard on that is like a couple years, 2024-ish, before it's fully self-driving in some limited areas. I don't know. I mean, but somewhere in that range, like it seems under 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I continue to get less and less optimistic or pessimistic, just because it seems like we're always 2 to 3 years. I think in 2017
Yeah.
or 2018, it seemed like we were getting close. And but yeah, I mean, overall, long term, I'm definitely bullish for sure. It's just hard to build a
Yeah.
business around it.
Yeah, I
At
don't
this
think
point.
if I'm in your shoes, I don't think too much about, especially because you're not building the actual hardware itself. You're not in that game. When the
Yeah.
hardware comes out, that's when you could have the meaningful conversations. It's not even necessarily when it comes out. It has to approach some sort of scale, for them, because they're going to release the product. People are going to use it, and then similar to the smart lockers, then there's going to be the open API and the SDK, whatever you build into. So I bet you're probably a year after it's released. So it's, at this point, it's just too early.
I think autonomous. Last thing on autonomous, my prediction is it's probably going to be first put into semis and long haul semis. I think that makes the most sense, where they could stay in one lane on the interstate and go, hundreds of miles with nobody in them. I think that seems the safest and probably the most attainable in the near term. But
Yeah, I
who
agree.
knows?
And Tesla's even mocked this up where they have semis trailing each other by only a couple of feet for aerodynamic purposes to save
Yeah.
fuel. And I guess save on battery. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I certainly agree with that. What other trends? What other things are interesting to you in the world? Do you follow, I don't know, crypto or decentralization or anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, crypto is fascinating. Web3 and the metaverse, all those sorts of things. I think we're still. I see metaverse where VR headsets were, even 5 years ago, and obviously they're compatible and they're used in the same environment. I don't know. I'm not as bullish on the metaverse. Maybe it's because I'm focusing so much on, the reality that we're living in at the moment. I feel like they changed the name from video game to metaverse. I just don't completely understand it yet. I feel like
Well,
it's video gamers,
here's the
right?
exercise I run through is if you look around at your physical space, you observe your hands outside your body, your desk, and your computer, and that is real because it feels incredibly detailed and there's sensory feedback. What if that sensory feedback was what if just purely the visual was identical to the experience that you're experiencing now? So, you put on the headset and bam, you're looking at my desk and you see there's a keyboard here and a cup and you're like, oh my God, the resolution on this is so good. I can't even tell the difference between my physical space and this.
Yeah.
That's going to be version, 7 of Oculus, whatever number. But that I work backwards from there because that's what they're shooting towards. And then it's like, well, if you have that, then anything in your anything in your reality can be designed and made with effectively a zero cost per production, just your time to design the space. And I think Facebook makes the editor, they're effectively like, okay, I want to design a basketball. Well, okay, let's start with a click on sphere, click on shape, texture, and all this. And that's pretty, even just in the business world, it's super transformative for cooperation because you're now uniting teams in a way that is really in person, even though it's in a reality space, a virtual reality space. You can be, hey guys, let's get in the conference room real quick. Bam, everyone hops in, and now you're like really looking at people. Maybe it'll be their avatar, but I thought that was a pretty compelling use case.
I think there's going to be some early applications that are going to be useful. I'm excited. I dabble. In some. I buy crypto. Dabbling in some NFTs. I'm definitely curious about everything that's going on in the metaverse, but I think before those things really take off, there's going to be a bubble, and that's my own personal opinion. There's a lot of companies that are early stage that are raising money or trying to raise money. People are buying these pieces of land and real estate at a very high premium. I think all of those indicators kind of just have a feeling that there's going to be a bubble pop probably in the short term, and then, but like most tech trends, that bubble will burst, maybe take out 70-80% of the productivity that's going on in that space. But then over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to get that back plus some, and there's going to be some really cool things that come out of it. So bullish long term, short term, it's really hard to figure out which ones I think are going to succeed, especially in the metaverse, because my prediction is probably 80% of them are going to be gone, maybe in the next 12 to 24 months.
It does strike me as amazing how consistent that prediction tends to go. Everything from gold and silver mining to the internet to you name it, any trend, crypto and NFTs. It just seems to be this consistent trend where there's sort of a collective conscious realization that, oh, this is something different and this is shiny and we want this. So I'm going all in. I'm going to be an early adopter. And then there's like everyone's an early adopter, prices shoot up, and then no one actually is a real adopter. They're just, the people who are buying the product or investing their time or buying the product as a means to make money, everything from the gold rush to the internet. And I think when you focus on the money aspect of it instead of the real reflection of what value does this create for people, you get into bubble territory where no one's actually doing diligence.
Yeah.
It's difficult to assess, I think, on some areas, probably less so on metaverse and more so on the NFTs, where the value that's being created or the technology that enables value creation in the case of NFTs is ethereal. It's what's the value of a brand? What's the value of a brand Nike? It's representative of value. It's not value itself, and that is, for me personally, it's just difficult to measure. It's there. Nike has brand value, but and you know people have brand value and communities do, but how to measure that is how to actually put that into price circulation is really what people are trying to figure out now.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the longest time, or for the last 5 to 7 years, we've really tried to figure out what different utilities, the blockchain and decentralized infrastructure would provide in certain industries and sectors. I keep trying to I keep waiting for somebody to come up with a way to have a decentralized government, essentially, or a decentralized democracy. I think if you look at anything that really needs to be reformed, that people are tired of, central power, it's government political system. So, obviously there's a lot of friction there with trying to do something that would be potentially changing an entire government. But, when you just look at the idea of what utility could be of most value and most importance and most trust for the general public, what's the percentage of people that buy crypto and buy NFTs? It has to be still super, super small. But if people could see a decentralized government or decentralized political system, that could be
Have you
be
watched
quite
or
interesting.
listened to the podcast with Bali Srinivasan? Balaji.
No.
A fascinating guy who's a partner at A16Z. He was a CTO of Coinbase, and he does a really good job of articulating this idea. So he says, and I think it's probably true that he outlines the pathway correctly, which is that, okay, decentralized government, got it. How does it happen in practice? Well, you have to compete. You have to offer an alternative. So say you and I go out tomorrow and we say, we're going to offer an alternative to the government in Portland, Oregon, where I live. Okay, what does that consist of? Well, it consists of garbage pickup, recycle pickup. It consists of street cleaning, security, like the police. It consists of maintaining parks. It may consist of libraries or resources for people. And then you aggregate these together and you have a municipality, you have an offering. And so we pay taxes into this system and this is what we get back. Ironically enough, we have to pay extra because like garbage cleaning is, or garbage pickup is separate. So it just goes case in point, it's incredibly inefficient today. Yeah. So even if you did this, and it was expensive, it would still be more efficient than the existing alternative in the government. So this would be people who are paying both to start, but they're realizing that this new subscription model that I'm opting into is better. And so more people opt into it, and then whoever started that private company or somebody from that private company runs for office, and they say, hey, they're running for office in the city sector, and they're saying, hey, we have this system that is more efficient than how we're running the city. Let's integrate that into the city and make that the default. And I think that business model or trajectory makes a lot of sense. I could see that happening. There's some people working on it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to find that on-ramp of how you get plugged in. I think that's a brilliant way for operationally how a government would work. And then there's also potentially the way to create a system that is the democratic, the voting process. I think there was somebody that was dabbling in this a few years ago, and I haven't seen any action from them, but essentially creating a voting and political system instead of the actual government infrastructure, but a voting political system based on a decentralized system. So instead of, the idea was instead of having your senators and House of Representatives, you have ways to potentially get the general public to vote on more things and more rapidly. So increasing the speed of, let's all vote on cannabis, essentially, and over the next month, you're going to get educated, the pros and cons, and then people make their vote, and everything's tallied on this decentralized platform. So Yeah, could be something like
Yeah,
that. Could be
yeah, I like
interesting
that a
as well.
lot. I like that a lot, actually. If you made voting not, if you made topical voting more accessible, as opposed to, I don't think we have any problem electing people. I think that's fine.
No, no, no. Well, it depends who you ask,
Yeah,
but probably you and I think
that's
it's
true.
fine. But
Maybe we do. Who knows? I don't
there's
know.
40% of the country right now thinks it's all
Well,
a joke.
maybe that's an argument for this case exactly. Maybe the
Yeah,
decentralized, yeah,
it's right
right.
timing.
Like if it actually were on the blockchain, then you wouldn't have. I mean, I can't imagine how you would have people who are protesting the legitimacy of an election if it's being done on chain, and you could even anonymously tie each vote to each individual person. Yeah, I'm surprised that's not more popular topic, right? It's like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe somebody's seriously working on that, but I haven't heard any big projects.
I mean, if you're seriously working on that, you might have somebody knocking on your door.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh,
You might have to do that on
yeah.
some
I
island.
know. I know. Fun stuff, man. Brian, congrats on all the progress, man. I really enjoyed getting to know you here. I saw I don't think your
Yeah.
Twitter is active. Are you active on any social media?
Um, no, I've been too busy. Not active on any social media. Um, I use it as a viewing
Yeah.
tool, but I don't publish
Yeah.
too often.
And the company you guys have raised a couple million. Where are you guys now from a traction standpoint, either revenue or employees, or how do you measure progress?
Yeah, so I won't disclose our revenue, but with we have 10 full-time employees here in the U.S., and then we have four full-time developers that are remote outside the country. So we have a total team of 14 at
Cool,
the moment.
cool. Well, I really enjoyed
Yeah.
brainstorming with you, man. Wish you the best of luck, and thanks for sharing your time with me.
Yeah, thanks for connecting, Mike. It was a good
All right,
conversation. I
buddy. Take
appreciate
care.
it.